He thought she was just another easy target. When airport police officer Derek Miller aggressively grabbed the arm of the quiet black woman in the worn gray hoodie at Gate 42, he expected fear. He expected immediate, cowering compliance. What he didn't expect was the ice-cold, unblinking glare that met his eyes, or the 6 words that would instantly end his career and send shockwaves through the entire department. You'll want to stick around for every second of this, because arrogant privilege just picked a fight with absolute, untouchable power. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzed with that familiar, sterile hum. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of soul-draining hour where the terminal was packed with exhausted business travelers and delayed vacationers. At Gate 42, Delta Flight 1184 to Washington, D.C. was already 20 minutes behind schedule. Olivia Hayes just wanted to go home. She sat quietly in the corner seating area, nursing a lukewarm black coffee. Dressed in a pair of faded denim jeans, plain white sneakers, and an oversized gray collegiate hoodie, she blended perfectly into the background. To anyone walking by, she was just another weary traveler. But Olivia was running on 36 hours of no sleep. She had spent the last week dismantling a massive multi-state corruption ring, working out of a windowless briefing room. She was exhausted, her bones aching with the kind of deep fatigue that only comes from carrying the weight of high-stakes federal operations. A few yards away, Officer Derek Miller was pacing the boarding area. Miller was a 12-year veteran of the Airport Police Division, a man who wore his badge not as a shield to protect, but as a heavy club to swing at anyone who didn't fit his narrow worldview. He had a reputation. His personnel file was thick with civilian complaints, harassment, excessive force profiling. But thanks to union technicalities and a buddy-buddy system with the local brass, he had always managed to dodge the consequences. Miller liked to establish dominance. He liked to remind people that in this airport, he was the king. His eyes scanned the crowd of waiting passengers, settling on the first class and sky priority boarding lanes. The gate agent, a nervous 20-something named Chloe, had just announced that pre-boarding would begin in 5 minutes. Olivia stood up, stretching her stiff back, and quietly moved toward the first-class lane. She had a confirmed seat in 2A, a small comfort she desperately needed. Miller's gaze locked onto her. He watched this black woman, in a worn-out hoodie, bypass the crowded economy seating area and stand casually at the front of the premium lane. His jaw tightened. To Miller, she didn't look like she belonged there. She didn't have a tailored suit. She wasn't carrying a designer briefcase. And she certainly didn't look like someone who could afford a $1,000 domestic ticket. In Miller's mind, the equation was simple. Fueled by his own deeply rooted prejudices, she was either trying to sneak on early, or she was flying on a stolen credit card. He adjusted his utility belt, the leather creaking loudly, and swaggered over. "Excuse me," Miller's voice cut through the dull roar of the terminal. It wasn't a polite request. It was a command laced with condescension. Olivia didn't turn around immediately. She was checking a final encrypted email on her phone. "Hey, I'm talking to you," Miller barked, stepping within 2 feet of her, invading her personal space. Olivia slowly turned, her expression entirely neutral. "Can I help you, officer? This line is for first class and priority passengers only," Miller said, looking her up and down with obvious disdain. "General boarding is going to be over there. You need to step out of this lane." Olivia looked at him. She didn't look angry, nor did she look intimidated. She just looked incredibly tired. "I am in the correct lane, officer. Thank you." She turned her back to him, returning her attention to her phone. That was Miller's first trigger. He demanded absolute deference, and this woman was dismissing him like he was a minor nuisance. A vein throbbed in his thick neck. "I don't think you heard me," Miller said, stepping around to block her view of the gate. "I need to see your boarding pass. Right now, are you the gate agent?" Olivia asked softly. "I'm airport law enforcement," Miller sneered, hooking his thumbs into his duty belt. "And I have reasonable suspicion to believe you're attempting to bypass airport boarding protocols. Show me the ticket, or you're not getting on any plane today." By now, the surrounding passengers were beginning to notice. A businessman in a sharp grey suit glanced over, frowning. A young mother pulling a stroller pulled her child a little closer. Olivia sighed. She could easily flash her credentials right then and there. She could end this in 2 seconds. But part of her, the part that had dedicated her entire life to rooting out bad cops and corrupt officials, wanted to see exactly how far this man would go when he thought he had the upper hand over a defenseless citizen. "My boarding pass is on my phone," Olivia said, her voice remarkably calm. "I will show it to the gate agent when she calls my zone." No, Miller stepped closer, his face turning red. "You're going to show it to me, and let me see your ID. You match the description of a suspect we have on file for luggage theft." It was a blatant lie, a classic, clumsy intimidation tactic. Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly. "A suspect? That's interesting. What's the specific description?" Miller wasn't used to being questioned. He was used to people stammering, apologizing, and scrambling to empty their pockets. "Don't play smart with me. ID now, hand it over. I haven't committed a crime. I am not acting suspiciously, and you do not have probable cause to demand my identification," Olivia stated, her voice carrying clearly over the hum of the crowd. She spoke with a practiced, measured cadence. It was the voice of someone who knew the law intimately. "I am giving you a lawful order." Miller raised his voice, intentionally creating a scene. He unclipped his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I have an uncooperative female at Gate 42, refusing to identify. Send backup copy, Unit 4. Officer Davis is en route," the radio crackled. Chloe, the gate agent, picked up her microphone, her hand trembling. Excuse me, officer. We're ready to begin boarding first class." "Hold the boarding," Miller snapped at the young woman. Chloe jumped back, terrified, and immediately lowered the microphone. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A man named Thomas, wearing a backward baseball cap and standing near the windows, quietly pulled out his smartphone and started recording. "Look," Olivia said, her tone dropping to a serious warning register. "I strongly advise you to walk away, officer. You are escalating a situation that does not exist. You are delaying a flight based on your own personal bias. Walk away. You don't tell me what to do." Miller spat. The perceived disrespect was too much for his fragile ego. He saw the phones coming out. He knew people were watching. He had to establish control, or he'd look weak. Without warning, Miller lunged forward. His heavy hand shot out and clamped down hard on Olivia's left bicep. His grip was brutal, the kind designed to inflict immediate pain and force compliance. He attempted to yank her out of the boarding lane, intending to slam her against the nearby structural pillar. "You're being detained," he yelled, but Olivia didn't stumble. She didn't cry out. Instead, her body instinctively rooted into a defensive stance. She didn't fight back physically. That would give him the excuse he desperately wanted. But she locked her arm and locked her eyes onto his. The utter absence of fear in her expression made Miller falter for a microsecond. "Take your hand off me," Olivia said. The words weren't a plea. They weren't a request. They were a definitive, chilling command. "You are resisting," Miller shouted, tightening his grip, his fingernails digging through the fabric of her hoodie. Right at that moment, Officer Greg Davies jogged up to the scene. Davies was younger, newer to the force, and immediately looked uncomfortable with what he was seeing. "Hey, Derek, what's going on?" Davies asked, keeping his hands away from his belt. "She's a suspect." Refusing to ID, resisting detention. "Grab her other arm," Miller ordered. Davies hesitated. He looked at Olivia. He didn't see a combative suspect. He saw a woman standing perfectly still, being manhandled by his overly aggressive partner. "Officer," Olivia said, turning her head slightly to address Davies, though her body remained rigid against Miller's grip. "Your partner is currently committing felony assault under color of law. If you touch me, you will be named as an accomplice in a federal indictment. I suggest you tell him to let go." Miller laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Listen to this one. Thinks she's a lawyer. Turn around and put your hands behind your back now." He reached for his handcuffs with his free hand. "I am going to reach into my left pocket," Olivia announced, loudly and clearly, so every camera in the vicinity could pick up the audio. "I am retrieving my identification. I am not armed. Don't you move." Miller yelled, dropping his handcuffs and dropping his hand toward his service weapon. "Derek, wait! Let her get her ID!" Davies urged, stepping forward, suddenly terrified this was about to turn deadly over a boarding pass. Olivia moved slowly, deliberately. She didn't reach for her back pocket, where a wallet would normally be. She reached into the interior breast pocket of her hoodie. Miller's hand hovered over his holster. The entire gate area held its breath. Thomas, the passenger recording, zoomed in. Olivia withdrew a flat black leather case. With a flick of her wrist, she flipped it open. The leather case didn't hold a driver's license. It held a heavy gold shield, polished to a mirror shine, seated next to a crisp green bordered federal identification card. Miller leaned in, his eyes squinting to read the bold black lettering beneath the gold seal of the United States Department of Justice. Olivia Hay, Special Agent, in charge, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Office of Professional Responsibility. For 3 agonizing seconds, the world stopped spinning for Officer Derek Miller. The color rapidly drained from his face, leaving him looking like a ghost under the harsh airport lighting. The heavy, oppressive swagger he carried just moments before evaporated, replaced by a cold, suffocating dread. The Office of Professional Responsibility. They were the feds who investigated the cops. They were the apex predators of law enforcement oversight. The people who tore apart corrupt departments, indicted dirty officers, and threw away the key. And this woman wasn't just an agent. She was the special agent in charge, the absolute top of the food chain for the entire southeastern United States. "Read it aloud, officer," Olivia commanded, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet whisper that somehow commanded more authority than a megaphone. Miller couldn't speak. His throat was completely dry. His hand, which was still clamped around her arm, suddenly felt like it was resting on a live bomb. He yanked it back, as if the fabric of her hoodie had caught fire. "I said, read it." Olivia stepped forward, instantly closing the gap he had tried to create. The prey had just revealed herself to be the hunter. Special agent. Miller stammered, his eyes darting frantically to the crowd, to the cameras, to his partner Davies, who was now staring at the ceiling, wishing he was anywhere else on Earth. "I told you to walk away," Olivia said, her eyes boring holes into his soul. "I told you that you lacked probable cause. I warned you that you were escalating a baseless interaction. And yet you chose to put your hands on me. You chose to use physical force on a citizen because your ego couldn't handle the fact that I didn't tremble when you barked. Ma'am, Agent Hayes." Miller swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "I was just doing my job. You matched a profile. Do not lie to me." Olivia's voice cracked like a whip, echoing off the terminal walls. Even the passengers in the next gate over turned their heads. You profiled me. You wanted to bully me. And when I didn't comply with your unlawful commands, you resorted to violence. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out her cell phone. She didn't dial 911. She bypassed the standard channels completely. She hit a speed dial number. The phone rang twice on speaker before a gruff voice answered. Chief Robertson. It was the chief of police for the entire Atlanta Airport Division. David, it's Sack Hayes, Olivia said, never taking her eyes off Miller. Olivia. The chief's voice instantly changed to one of profound respect. I thought you were wrapping up that undercover operation today. Are you heading back to D.C.? I am, Olivia replied. But I'm currently standing at gate 42, where one of your officers, a Derek Miller, just physically assaulted me, attempted an unlawful detainment, and threatened to draw his weapon because I was standing in the first-class boarding lane. Dead silence on the other end of the phone. Miller looked like he was about to vomit. His knees literally buckled slightly. He did what? Chief Robertson's voice was suddenly dangerously quiet. I want him disarmed, David. Right now. I want him stripped of his credentials, and I want him detained in your holding area until my field agents arrive to take his formal statement. If he is not in custody in 5 minutes, the next call I make is to the Attorney General, and the FBI will assume control of your entire precinct's jurisdiction, pending a civil rights investigation. Done, Robertson said without a second of hesitation. Put him on. Olivia held the phone out. Miller's hand shook so violently he could barely take the device. See, Chief? Miller, you absolute idiot! The chief's voice blasted through the speaker. Stand down. Hand your weapon and your badge to Officer Davies immediately. Do not say another word. You are relieved of duty. Miller slowly lowered the phone. He looked at Davies, who had already taken a tactical step back, his hand resting cautiously on his own belt, ready to enforce the chief's orders if Miller did anything stupid. With trembling hands, Miller unclicked his holster. He handed his service weapon to Davies. Then he unpinned the silver badge from his chest, a badge he had hidden behind for 12 years, and handed that over too. The terminal was dead silent. The passengers, who had been holding their breath, watched in utter disbelief as the bully who had strutted through the gate 5 minutes earlier was completely dismantled. Olivia took her phone back. She looked down at her arm, where red finger marks were already beginning to bruise on her skin. She looked back up at Miller, who was now staring at the floor, stripped of his power, his uniform suddenly looking 2 sizes too big. You thought I was a nobody, Olivia said softly, only for him to hear. But I'm the ghost that haunts guys like you. The heavy silence that blanketed gate 42 was deafening. Dozens of passengers, a demographic mix of seasoned business travelers, exhausted parents, and wide-eyed tourists, stood completely paralyzed. The only sound was the distinct, metallic click-clack of Officer Greg Davies clearing the chamber of Derek Miller's 9mm Glock before securing it in his own tactical belt. Miller stood in the center of the concourse, entirely stripped of his armor. His duty belt hung slightly lopsided without the weight of his firearm, and the spot on his chest, where his badge had rested, was marked by 2 small, empty pinholes in the navy blue fabric. He looked small. The aggressive, chest-puffing predator who had gripped Olivia's arm just minutes ago had vanished, replaced by a pale, trembling man staring into the abyss of a ruined life. Hands behind your back, Derek, Davies said, his voice completely devoid of camaraderie. Davies had always hated how Miller operated, but the unspoken blue wall of silence had kept him quiet. Now ordered by the chief of police and standing in front of the FBI's regional apex predator, That wall was crumbling to dust. Before Davies could retrieve his handcuffs, a loud, authoritative voice boomed from the security checkpoint corridor. "Hold on! Everybody just hold on a damn minute!" Pushing through the crowd of onlookers was Sergeant Brad Jenkins, the shift supervisor. Jenkins was a heavy-set man with a thick, graying mustache and a face perpetually flushed red from high blood pressure and stress. He was a relic of the old guard, a man who had spent 3 decades burying use-of-force complaints and protecting his own. He had heard the radio chatter and caught the tail end of Chief Robertson's broadcast. Jenkins took one look at Miller's empty chest and disarmed posture, then zeroed in on Olivia. He didn't see a federal agent. He saw a civilian who had somehow managed to embarrass his department. "What the hell is going on here?" Jenkins demanded, stepping between Davies and Miller. He turned to Olivia, putting on a condescending, placating smile. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Jenkins. I don't know what kind of misunderstanding happened here, but there is absolutely no need to escalate this. Let's step into the back corridor, away from these cameras, and we can sort this out quietly. I'll make sure Officer Miller apologizes, and we can get you on your flight." It was the classic cover-up maneuver. Isolate the victim, remove the witnesses, offer a fake apology to save a career. Olivia didn't move an inch. She looked at Jenkins with the same icy, clinical detachment she had shown Miller. "There is no misunderstanding, Sergeant Jenkins," Olivia said clearly, ensuring the dozen cell phones still recording picked up every syllable. "Your officer committed felony assault and attempted an unlawful detention under color of law in direct violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 242. The chief of police has already relieved him of duty." Jenkins's face darkened, his fake smile dropping instantly. He stepped closer to Olivia, intentionally invading her space, trying to use his physical size to intimidate her. "Now listen here, lady. I don't care who you called. I am the supervisor on this concourse, and I say we take this in the back. You're causing a disturbance, and I can just as easily have you detained for disorderly conduct." Thomas, the passenger in the backward baseball cap, audibly gasped from a few feet away, shifting his phone to make sure Jenkins was perfectly in frame. Olivia's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. She reached back into her hoodie. Jenkins instinctively rested his hand on his own weapon, a fatal miscalculation. Olivia produced her FBI shield a second time, holding it up right in front of Jenkins's nose. "My name is Olivia Hayes, Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility," she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying, deadly calm. "I investigate corrupt, abusive law enforcement officers. I tear apart precincts that cover up civil rights violations. And if you do not remove your hand from your weapon and step out of my face this exact second, Sergeant, I will have you indicted for conspiracy to interfere with a federal investigation before this flight touches down in Washington." Jenkins froze, the blood drained from his ruddy face so fast he looked physically ill. His eyes darted from the gold shield to Olivia's unblinking stare. The realization hit him like a freight train. He wasn't talking to a frustrated passenger. He was talking to the Reaper. I apologize, Agent Hayes," Jenkins stammered, taking 3 rapid steps backward, his hands held up in surrender. I didn't know. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, Sergeant. A concept you should be intimately familiar with," Olivia replied coldly. She turned her attention back to Davies. "Officer Davies, Chief Robertson gave you a direct order. Execute it." Davies didn't hesitate this time. He grabbed Miller's wrists, pulled them roughly behind his back, and secured the steel handcuffs. The ratcheting sound echoed through the gate. "Walk," Davies commanded, shoving Miller forward. As Miller was paraded through the concourse, completely broken and humiliated in front of hundreds of people, The crowd parted for him. Nobody cheered. Nobody jeered. The absolute breathtaking swiftness of the justice they had just witnessed left them in stunned awe. Thomas tapped his screen, instantly uploading the unedited, 4-minute video to every social media platform he had. Olivia turned around and walked back to the boarding desk. Chloe, the young gate agent, was trembling violently, her eyes wide with shock. "I apologize for the delay," Olivia said softly, her tone instantly shifting from authoritative federal agent back to exhausted traveler. "Whenever you are ready." "Yes, ma'am. I mean Agent Hayes." Chloe scrambled, grabbing her scanner. "First class is clear to board. Have a wonderful flight." Olivia scanned her phone and walked down the jet bridge. She thought the worst of the night was over. She was wrong. Delta Flight 1184 was a Boeing 737, smelling of stale coffee, jet fuel, and recycled air. Olivia moved into seat 2A, stowed her small carry-on bag beneath the seat in front of her, and collapsed into the leather cushion. Her body ached. The adrenaline from the confrontation with Miller was rapidly burning off, leaving her with a hollow, crushing exhaustion. She leaned her head against the cool acrylic of the window, closed her eyes, and waited for takeoff. 20 minutes passed. The cabin doors closed. The safety briefing was completed. The plane pushed back from the gate, the engines whining as they spooled up. But as the aircraft reached the edge of the taxiway, the engines suddenly throttled down. The plane jolted to a halt, sitting motionless in the darkness of the tarmac. The intercom crackled to life. "Folks, this is Captain Mitchell from the flight deck. I apologize for the delay, but we've been ordered by ground control to hold our position. We have a local security situation that requires us to return to a holding pad. We should have more information shortly." Olivia opened her eyes. Her instincts, honed by 20 years in the bureau, instantly flared. Something was wrong. Out the window, the flashing red and blue lights of 3 airport police SUVs were speeding across the tarmac, cutting directly in front of the aircraft to block its path. A few moments later, a heavy mechanical thud echoed through the cabin as mobile air stairs were pushed up against the forward boarding door. The flight attendants exchanged nervous, confused glances. The main cabin door swung open. Stepping into the aircraft was Lieutenant Arthur Gable. He was the president of the local airport police union, a notoriously aggressive political bulldog who had spent his career shielding dirty cops from accountability. Gable was tall, wearing a sharp tactical uniform, his hair slicked back with heavy gel. He looked furious. He had just seen the video Thomas uploaded, which was already going viral globally. He saw his department being publicly humiliated and his most loyal enforcer, Derek Miller, locked in a holding cell. Gable wasn't going to let an out-of-town federal agent come into his airport and dismantle his kingdom without a fight. He erroneously believed that because the plane was still on the ground in Atlanta, he retained ultimate jurisdictional authority. He marched directly into the first-class cabin, followed by 2 armed tactical officers. The passengers gasped, shrinking back into their seats. Gable scanned the cabin and immediately locked eyes with Olivia in 2A. "Olivia, Hayes," Gable barked, his voice loud enough to carry back into the economy section. "I am Lieutenant Gable. You need to gather your belongings and deplane immediately. You are being detained for questioning regarding the fraudulent impersonation of a federal officer and the assault of an airport police officer." The audacity was staggering. Olivia didn't flinch. She remained seated, looking up at him with tired, unimpressed eyes. "Lieutenant Gable," Olivia said evenly, "you are currently interfering with a commercial flight carrying a federal agent. I suggest you turn around and walk off this aircraft. Your credentials have not been verified by my office. Gable sneered, stepping closer, blocking the aisle. "I have reasonable suspicion to believe the badge you flashed at Gate 42 is a counterfeit, and until we verify it downtown, you're not going anywhere. Unbuckle your belt and stand up, or my officers will physically remove you from this aircraft." Sarah, the lead flight attendant, stepped forward bravely. "Sir, you cannot speak to a passenger this way. I need you to. Shut up and step back." Gable snapped at her, causing Sarah to flinch. That was it. Olivia had reached her absolute limit. "Lieutenant," Olivia said, her voice piercing the tense silence of the cabin, "you are making a catastrophic mistake. By boarding this aircraft and attempting to detain a federal agent, you are violating Title 49 U.S. Code Section 46.504, interference with flight crew members and attendants. That is a federal felony, carrying a 20-year sentence. I am the law in this airport." Gable roared, losing his temper, spit flying from his lips. "I don't care what fake badge you carry. Grab her." He ordered his 2 tactical officers. The 2 officers took a hesitant step forward, reaching for Olivia. Before their hands could even cross the armrest, a quiet, completely unassuming man in seat 4C, who had been reading a paperback novel, suddenly stood up. "Federal Air Marshal, drop your hands right now," the man shouted. Kevin O'Connor moved with terrifying speed. In a fraction of a second, he had cleared the distance from row 4 to row 2. He didn't just flash a badge. He had his Sig Sauer P229 unholstered and pointed directly at the chest of the closest tactical officer. The entire cabin erupted in screams, passengers ducking down behind their seats. I said, "Hands in the air. Step back." Marshal O'Connor roared, his weapon perfectly steady. The 2 tactical officers, suddenly staring down the barrel of a federal agent's gun, immediately threw their hands up, backing away from Olivia, so fast they crashed into the bulkhead. Gable stood paralyzed, his eyes wide with absolute shock. "Marshal O'Connor," Olivia said calmly, slowly unbuckling her seatbelt and standing up to her full height. "Thank you. Please secure the lieutenant. He is under arrest for federal interference." You can't do this." Gable stammered, the color draining from his face as O'Connor swiftly holstered his weapon and ripped Gable's arms behind his back, applying tactical zip ties with brutal efficiency. "I am the Union President. I have jurisdiction." "You have nothing." Olivia stepped into the aisle, standing inches from Gable's terrified face. The moment the boarding door closed, this aircraft became federal jurisdiction. You just hijacked a commercial airliner to protect a corrupt cop. She turned to the 2 tactical officers, who were shaking with their hands still raised. "Take his badge, take his gun, escort him off this aircraft, or the marshal will arrest both of you for conspiracy. Go." The officers didn't argue. They disarmed their own lieutenant, grabbed him by the arms, and practically dragged him toward the exit. "Captain Mitchell," Olivia called out toward the open flight deck door. The captain peeked his head out, looking thoroughly bewildered. "Yes, Agent Hayes." "The garbage has been removed," Olivia said, her tone professional and calm. "Please secure the cabin doors and get us in the air." As Gable was dragged down the air stairs, utterly defeated and bound for federal lockup, the entire cabin, from first class all the way to the back row of economy, erupted into a massive, deafening round of applause. The Boeing 737 sliced through the night sky, cruising at 35,000 feet over the Carolinas. Inside the darkened first-class cabin, the only light came from the glowing screen of Olivia Hayes's encrypted federal laptop. She hadn't ordered a drink. She hadn't reclined her seat. The bone-deep exhaustion that had plagued her at Gate 42 was entirely gone, replaced by a cold, hyper-focused adrenaline. To the other passengers on Flight 1184, the drama had ended when Lieutenant Arthur Gable was dragged down the air stairs in tactical zip ties. They thought they had witnessed a rogue cop getting his comeuppance. They had no idea they had just watched the inciting incident of the largest federal corruption takedown in the history of the southeastern seaboard. Olivia typed a series of complex passcodes into her terminal, opening a direct, secure line to the FBI's Strategic Information and Operations Center, SIOC, at the J. Edgar Hoover Building in Washington. The screen flickered, and the face of Special Agent Jonathan Pierce, her second-in-command, appeared. Pierce was a former Marine intelligence officer, sharp, ruthless, and entirely loyal to Olivia. He was sitting in the SIOC, surrounded by glowing monitors and a dozen junior analysts. "Boss," Pierce said, his voice crackling slightly over the satellite connection. "I'm looking at the footage from the terminal. It's everywhere. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they've all broken standard programming. You're trending #1 globally. The internet is already calling you the ghost of Gate 42. "I don't care about the internet, Jonathan," Olivia replied, her voice hushed but razor-sharp. "I care about the timetable. Miller and Gable just handed us the keys to the castle. We are accelerating Operation Icarus. I want the raids moved up." Tonight, Pierce's eyes widened slightly. Operation Icarus was a massive 2-year RICO investigation into the Atlanta Airport Police Division. What nobody in that terminal knew, what Officer Derek Miller couldn't have possibly fathomed when he decided to profile the quiet black woman in the gray hoodie, was that Olivia had been in Atlanta specifically to finalize the indictments against him and his entire chain of command. The airport police union wasn't just protecting bullies. They were running a sophisticated, cartel-level smuggling and extortion ring. They used their security clearances to bypass TSA, moving millions of dollars in narcotics through the baggage handling system. Miller's favorite tactic, the one he had attempted on Olivia, was profiling minority travelers, falsely accusing them of luggage theft or fraud, and illegally confiscating their cash and valuables under the guise of civil asset forfeiture. They targeted people they thought didn't have the resources or the courage to fight back. Moving the raids up means we execute without the local DEA attachments, Pierce warned, his fingers already flying across his keyboard to pull up the tactical grids. "It's going to be a pure bureau operation." "Good," Olivia stated. "The local DEA field office has leaks. Gable's union has been buying off low-level informants for months. If we wait until Friday as planned, Gable's arrest will spook the rest of the leadership. They'll start shredding documents and wiping servers by midnight. We hit them now, while they're scrambling to figure out how their union president just got arrested on a commercial airliner." "Understood," Pierce said, his tone turning instantly to ice-cold professionalism. "I'm authorizing the deployment of the hostage rescue team and regional SWAT from the Charlotte and Birmingham field offices. Target Alpha is the precinct headquarters at Concourse E. Target Bravo is the Union Lodge downtown. I want the digital forensics team on site the second the doors are breached," Olivia instructed. "Gable's personal locker, Miller's patrol vehicle, and the shift supervisor's hard drives. And Jonathan?" "Yes, boss. Contact Federal Air Marshal O'Connor's chain of command. Have his security clearance temporarily elevated to assist in the secure transport of Gable to federal holding. I don't want local transport handling a suspect of this magnitude." "Done." Before Pierce could sign off, a high-priority incoming call overrode the secure channel. The caller ID flashed crimson red, Attorney General Secure Comms. Olivia tapped the screen, merging the call. "Agent Hayes." "Olivia, what in God's name is happening in Georgia?" Attorney General Robert Montgomery's voice boomed through her headset. He sounded frantic. Montgomery was a political animal always terrified of optics and public fallout. "I just got off the phone with Gregory Hughes, the mayor of Atlanta. He is threatening to hold a midnight press conference, accusing the FBI of a federal occupation of his airport. He says you unlawfully arrested the president of the police union and hijacked a runway. With all due respect, Mr. Attorney General, Mayor Hughes is a panicked politician watching his corrupt police department unravel on live television." Olivia replied, her voice remaining perfectly steady. "Lieutenant Gable illegally boarded a commercial aircraft and attempted to forcibly detain a federal agent to suppress an ongoing investigation. That is a federal felony. The mayor says Gable was acting within his jurisdictional rights to investigate a disturbance." Montgomery countered, clearly sweating under the political pressure. "Olivia, the optics of a federal agent arresting local cops on a plane. It looks like a rogue operation. Hughes is calling his senators. He's demanding your immediate suspension pending an internal review." Olivia leaned back in her leather seat, staring out the window into the pitch-black sky. She had anticipated this. Mayor Hughes was heavily funded by the police union's Political Action Committee. He was their puppet, and right now, the puppet was trying to cut the strings. "Mr. Attorney General," Olivia said, her tone shifting to a terrifyingly quiet register that made even the AG pause. "I am currently transmitting a file to your secure terminal. I suggest you open it." In Washington, Montgomery clicked the file. It was a decrypted audio ledger. "What you are looking at," Olivia explained calmly, "is a record of offshore wire transfers. For the past 18 months, Lieutenant Gable has been depositing undocumented cash into a shell company in the Cayman Islands. A shell company that is jointly registered to Mayor Gregory Hughes's brother-in-law." Dead silence on the line. "The disturbance at Gate 42 was not a misunderstanding, sir. Officer Miller attempted to illegally detain and assault me because I fit the demographic profile of the victims they routinely extort." Olivia continued, surgically dismantling the politician's defense. "When Gable realized I was federal oversight, he panicked. He boarded the aircraft not to enforce the law, but to silence me before I could report the incident, completely unaware that his department is the target of a 2-year federal RICO probe." She let the silence hang for a moment, allowing the absolute gravity of the situation to crush the Attorney General's political anxieties. "I am executing the Operation Icarus arrest warrants tonight," Olivia stated, leaving no room for debate. "If Mayor Hughes holds a press conference, I strongly advise you to let him, because tomorrow morning I will personally sign the indictment for his arrest on charges of racketeering and conspiracy." "Do I have your authorization to proceed, sir?" Montgomery exhaled a long, shaky breath. He knew a kill shot when he saw one. "You have a blank check, Agent Hayes. Burn it all down." The line disconnected. Olivia looked at the tactical map glowing on her screen. Hundreds of blue dots, FBI tactical units, were currently converging on Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in complete radio silence. The trap was sprung. "Jonathan," Olivia said, turning her attention back to her second-in-command. "Tell the breach teams they are green. Execute." At exactly 1:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the meticulously laid trap violently snapped shut. The heavy, reinforced steel doors of the Atlanta Airport Police Precinct in Concourse E didn't just open. They were violently separated from their reinforced frames by specialized, shaped breaching charges. The deafening concussive blast reverberated through the empty corridors of the terminal, shaking the thick glass windows of the nearby concourse storefronts. Simultaneously, 4 miles away in the heart of downtown Atlanta, a pair of heavy armored bearcats roared through the wrought iron perimeter gates of the local police union lodge, twisting the expensive metal into unidentifiable scrap. The raids were a masterclass in overwhelming, synchronized federal force. Inside the airport precinct, the night shift officers, many of whom were deeply embedded as the operational muscle in Lieutenant Gable's sprawling smuggling ring, were completely caught off guard. Dozens of FBI SWAT operators, clad in heavy tactical gear, Kevlar vests, and wielding suppressed carbines, flooded the fluorescent-lit hallways like a rising, unstoppable tide of dark blue. FBI, nobody move. Hands away from your weapons and get on the floor. The lead operators roared, moving with terrifying, practiced precision. Laser sights cut through the dusty air, painting the chests of corrupt cops who were too stunned to even comprehend, reaching for their service weapons. In his glass-walled supervisor's office at the end of the precinct hallway, Sergeant Brad Jenkins, the man who had tried to intimidate Olivia at the boarding gate just hours prior, was in a state of absolute, dripping panic. He had seen the viral video of Miller's arrest. He had heard the radio chatter about Gable being taken off the plane in zip ties. He knew the walls were coming down. Jenkins was frantically shoving armfuls of heavily redacted use-of-force reports and illicit cash ledgers into an industrial paper shredder. Sweat poured down his flushed face, staining the collar of his uniform. The machine was whining, struggling to chew through the massive volume of paper he was forcing into its blades. Come on, you piece of junk," Jenkins hissed, desperately trying to unjam the plastic teeth. Before he could reach for the next stack of incriminating files, the reinforced glass wall of his office shattered inward, showering the room in 1,000 sparkling diamonds of safety glass. 2 tactical agents vaulted through the broken frame. Before Jenkins could even raise his hands to surrender, he was violently tackled to the linoleum floor. The air rushed from his lungs in a heavy grunt as heavy boots pinned his shoulders. The cold, unforgiving steel of federal handcuffs ratcheted tightly around his thick wrists. "Sergeant Jenkins, you are under arrest for conspiracy and destruction of evidence," an agent barked, while a specialized digital forensics technician immediately dove onto Jenkins's desk. The technician jammed a proprietary USB drive into the supervisor's computer tower, executing a hard override program that instantly locked the hard drive and prevented the fail-safe wiping software Jenkins had been trying to initiate. Deep inside the precinct's expansive locker room, a separate team of agents armed with heavy-duty bolt cutters was systematically cracking open the personal lockers of the targeted officers. They reached Officer Derek Miller's locker, number 412. With a sharp snap, the padlock gave way. The metal door was swung open. Inside, hidden beneath a spare, neatly pressed patrol uniform, agents found the holy grail of physical evidence that would bury the department. An agent pulled out a heavy black canvas duffel bag and unzipped it on the central bench. Inside sat neatly stacked bricks of $100 bills, $400,000 in shrink-wrapped, extorted cash. Nestled beside the money were a dozen stolen luxury watches, confiscated from targeted travelers under the false guise of civil asset forfeiture. Most damning of all was a small, black, leather-bound ledger. It documented every illegal shakedown, every fabricated charge, and every cut of the money funneled directly to Lieutenant Gable and the Union over the past 5 years. By the time Delta Flight 184 began its final, smooth descent into Washington's Reagan National Airport, the entire operational command structure of the Atlanta Airport Police Division had been surgically and completely dismantled. 62 officers were currently sitting in federal custody, stripped of their badges, their weapons, and their power. The precinct itself was completely cordoned off with bright yellow federal crime scene tape, an empire turned to ash in less than 30 minutes. The Boeing 737 touched down with a gentle jolt, the thrust reversers roaring to life as the aircraft slowed on the darkened tarmac. Inside the first-class cabin, Olivia Hayes calmly closed her encrypted laptop and slid it into her worn leather bag. The bone-deep exhaustion that had plagued her earlier at the boarding gate was finally beginning to creep back into her muscles, replacing the cold, hyper-focused adrenaline that had sustained her through the operation's execution. As the aircraft slowly taxied to the gate, the captain's voice crackled softly over the intercom. "Folks, welcome to Washington, D.C. The local time is 2:15 a.m. We have been asked by federal authorities to allow the passenger in seat 2A to deplane first. Please remain seated until she has cleared the aircraft. And thank you for your patience this evening." The cabin remained entirely respectfully silent. Nobody complained about the delay. Nobody reached for the overhead bins. As Olivia stood up and grabbed her small carry-on bag, Federal Air Marshal O'Connor stepped out of row 4 and gave her a sharp, deeply respectful nod. "Hell of a night, Agent Hayes," O'Connor murmured. "Thank you for the assist, Marshal," Olivia replied softly. She walked up the jet bridge, the heavy, humid air of the capital city greeting her. She expected the terminal to be entirely empty at this hour, a quiet sanctuary after the chaos of the evening. Instead, waiting for her at the exact threshold of the gate was Harrison Clayton. Clayton was one of the most ruthless, highly paid, and morally bankrupt defense attorneys in Washington. He was the designated fixer for the National Police Union Coalition, a man whose entire career was built on finding legal loopholes to keep dirty cops on the streets. Clad in a flawless $10,000 bespoke Brioni suit, Clayton looked entirely out of place in the deserted, fluorescent-lit terminal. He was flanked by 2 nervous-looking junior associates, both clutching heavy leather briefcases. He had been woken up at midnight by a frantic phone call from Atlanta and had rushed to Reagan National to intercept the woman responsible for the crisis. Clayton stepped directly into Olivia's path, aggressively blocking her exit. He held out a thick, legal-sized manila envelope, his face contorted in a mask of smooth, practiced arrogance. "Special Agent Hayes," Clayton said, his voice echoing loudly off the empty walls. "I am Harrison Clayton. I represent Lieutenant Arthur Gable and Officer Derek Miller. What I hold in my hand is an emergency federal injunction, signed just 20 minutes ago by a district court judge, whom I woke up personally. It mandates the immediate, unconditional release of my clients, citing unlawful detainment, gross lack of jurisdiction, and excessive federal overreach." He practically shoved the envelope toward her chest. "You stepped way out of line tonight, Agent Hayes," Clayton sneered, trying to establish dominance over the quiet woman in the gray hoodie. "You let your ego turn a simple, routine airport security altercation into a federal circus. By tomorrow afternoon, you will be facing a massive, multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit for deprivation of rights under color of law, and I will personally see to it that your federal badge is permanently revoked." Olivia didn't take the envelope. She didn't flinch. She didn't even break her stride. She simply sidestepped him with effortless grace, forcing Clayton to pivot awkwardly and walk briskly just to keep up with her relentless pace. "Did you happen to read the news on your frantic drive over here, Mr. Clayton?" Olivia asked, her voice impossibly calm, not a single hint of intimidation in her tone. "I don't give a damn about a viral video of a misunderstood interaction." Clayton scoffed, his Italian leather shoes clicking loudly on the polished terrazzo floor as he chased her. "The court of public opinion doesn't matter to me. The law matters." and the law says you had absolutely zero right or probable cause to arrest my clients on that aircraft." Olivia stopped walking abruptly. Clayton nearly collided with her, stumbling back a step to regain his composure. She turned to face the towering, arrogant lawyer, her unblinking gaze locking onto his. "While you were busy waking up a federal judge to draft a baseless, theatrical injunction regarding a boarding gate dispute," Olivia said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet whisper that commanded the entire terminal, "the FBI was busy executing a massive, coordinated raid on the Atlanta Airport Police Precinct and the downtown Union Lodge. Operation Icarus." Clayton froze. The smug, manufactured confidence instantly drained from his face, replaced by a twitch of genuine confusion. "Operation? What? We just recovered $500,000 in extorted, shrink-wrapped cash stashed in your client, Derek Miller's locker," Olivia continued, stepping 1 inch closer to the lawyer, surgically dismantling his reality. "We secured the offshore wire transfers directly linking Lieutenant Gable to a narcotics trafficking syndicate operating out of the baggage claim. We have Sergeant Jenkins on video attempting to destroy federal evidence. Your clients aren't being held on a simple civil rights violation, Harrison. They are currently being booked into federal custody on charges of racketeering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and extortion under the RICO Act." Clayton's jaw actually dropped. His mouth opened and closed silently, struggling to form a coherent legal defense for an apocalypse he didn't know was happening. Behind him, his 2 junior associates went completely pale. They exchanged panicked glances and instinctively took a large step back, as if being in Clayton's immediate vicinity was suddenly legally toxic. "That injunction you're holding," Olivia gestured to the envelope with a slight dismissive tilt of her head. "It's worse than useless. Right now, it's physical evidence that you are actively attempting to obstruct a massive federal racketeering investigation. If I were you, I would find a paper shredder. Quickly." Clayton slowly lowered his arm. The manila envelope suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. He realized, with crushing, career-altering clarity, that the men he had rushed to the airport to defend were already ghosts. The case was unwinnable. The union was dead. He had walked right into a trap. "Have a very pleasant evening, Mr. Clayton," Olivia said. She turned her back on him and walked away, the rhythmic, steady click of her white sneakers against the floor echoing behind her, leaving the high-powered lawyer standing paralyzed in the center of the terminal. Olivia pushed through the sliding glass exit doors of Reagan National. The cool, humid air of the capital washed over her face. The city was quiet, the iconic monuments illuminated in the distance, standing as silent sentinels over the sleeping metropolis. A black, armored Chevrolet Suburban with heavily tinted windows was idling at the curb. Special Agent Jonathan Pierce, her trusted second-in-command, was leaning against the passenger side door, holding 2 large cups of steaming black coffee. As Olivia approached, Pierce smiled, a rare, genuine expression of immense respect. He handed her one of the cups. "Final status report?" Olivia asked, taking a long, grateful sip of the bitter, life-saving liquid. 62 confirmed arrests. "Not a single shot fired by our teams," Pierce reported, his voice filled with pride. "Mayor Hughes just tendered his resignation on live television 20 minutes ago, claiming health reasons before the indictments even unseal. The precinct is completely under federal control. It's over, boss. You got every single one of them." Olivia looked down at the coffee cup, then out toward the glowing, distant spire of the Washington Monument. The crushing exhaustion was finally taking hold, but it was a good exhaustion. It was the heavy, satisfying weight of a monumental victory. She thought about Derek Miller, sitting in a cold, windowless federal interrogation room right now, finally realizing that his reign of terror was permanently, irrevocably extinguished. She thought about the countless innocent travelers he had bullied, harassed, and robbed. People who didn't have a gold shield in their pocket to protect them. They wouldn't ever have to worry about him, or any of his corrupt brothers, ever again. "Drive me home, Jonathan," Olivia said softly, pulling open the heavy armored door of the SUV. "I need to sleep." The Suburban pulled away from the curb, its taillights fading into the quiet, peaceful Washington night, leaving the shadows of corruption far behind. What a truly explosive ending. Olivia Hayes didn't just put a bully in his place. She entirely dismantled a corrupt empire from seat 2A. This story perfectly proves that true power doesn't need to shout, and those who abuse their authority will eventually pick a fight with the absolute wrong person. If you loved the intense drama, the satisfying karma, and the ultimate victory for justice in this story, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite moment, share this with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more unbelievable real-life stories.